to give us this presentation. I'm really excited about this. Take it away, Jim.
Excellent. So thanks everyone for coming on a 5:30 on a Friday afternoon. I really appreciate your time. So we're here to talk about engaging stakeholders on RaleighNC.gov. We'll introduce ourselves, give you a little bit of background on Raleigh and the project, and then we'll get into the meat of the presentation. So I'll let Pete introduce himself first.
Hello, everybody. I'm Pete Weber. I am the web administrator with the City of Raleigh's Communications Department. I've been in that role 7 years, and I am happy to be here today to talk stakeholder engagement with you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sally Shaughnessy from Atten Design Group. We're the lucky agency that got to partner with the City of Raleigh on this fantastic project. So a little bit about Atten. We are a full-service digital agency. We've been helping partners overcome ineffective technology and design for 20 years. We've launched successful campaigns with partners like Human Rights Watch, Stanford University, Johns Hopkins, and the City of Boulder. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
And my name is Jim Albrecht. I'm the GIS and Emerging Technology Manager with the IT department in the city. I've been with the city for a little bit over 7 years in various technology roles, and I manage the website.
City of Oaks. So who are we? In Raleigh, we like to say we're the city that's nestled in a large park. If you're flying into Raleigh, you see nothing but trees for miles. You think you're in the jungle, but then the skyline pops out of nowhere, and you're still surrounded by trees. Our culture is diverse. Much of our population moved here within the last decade, and they've shared their many cultures with us. And as for location, if you're looking for a city vibe where the relaxing mountains and beach are 2 hours away, then Raleigh is for you.
So Pete mentioned that most of our population has moved here in the last 10 years. I moved here about 7 years ago. And one of the things that attracted me to the city was just how fast it was growing. So if you pick up a magazine and you see a top 10 list, Raleigh usually it pops up, whether it be best place to raise a family, best place to start a business, etc. We often find ourselves on those top 10 lists. Stat that we use in the city in the greater Raleigh area that helps to demonstrate that is 62 people a day move into the greater Raleigh area every day. Fascinating.
So Raleigh by the numbers, our population's right around 500,000. With the surrounding jurisdictions, there are about 1.2 million people that come to Raleigh for services. The land area is 146 square miles, and we're just under 4,000 employees strong, full-time, and just under 3,000 part-time. And then we operate on a budget of 1.1 billion.
And this is a government conference, so most of you know this. You know, the interesting thing I think that Pete and I love about local government is just the diversity in what we do. So cities are unlike any other business in any industry, where just the diversity and the breadth of services that we provide, whether it be public safety, to keeping our roadways open, to moving people through transit, to picking up trash, etc. It's just a wide variety planning our city. It's a really interesting challenge just delivering services, but it's also an interesting challenge when you're trying to provide digital communication platform for all of those services. So a little bit about the project. We've been working on this project for a number of years. We're very cognizant of leveraging taxpayer dollars. We want to be efficient and thoughtful about how we do that. We had just completed a major branding effort in the city, so we had some stakeholder engagement in process. As I mentioned, it was a 3-year project, and it included 3 phases. And again, most of you folks are involved in government, understand kind of some of our procurement processes. And so what we needed to do was we needed to do a discovery, which was basically a discovery and needs assessment. We did some architecture and infrastructure, and then we did the major project, the heavy lifting around the design and migration of the project itself. One of the things that was a major push for us was we were using an older legacy CMS system called Alfresco, which was an open source CMS system. We had some staff turnover over the previous 5 years. We had a ton of technical debt, and we were keeping that thing running with baling wire. And it was, every day we came in and it was running was a good day. There was some organizational pressure. We weren't able to add any new features or functions to this kind of legacy code base. And so there was some organizational pressure to migrate to a platform that gives us some ability to add features and functions, modernize the platform, etc. In addition, we had very organizational unit content. And so there was this opportunity to migrate to a much more cohesive kind of content strategy.
And, at about this time, this is when Atten came in, and it was clear to us in the RFP process that Raleigh had already made a significant investment in their digital footprint. And in the run up to the project kickoff, as Jim said, Raleigh had completed a major rebrand. They've broadly redefined their website strategy, their digital strategy. It was really transparent in the RFP process that what we saw was that the RFP was thorough. It showed a really thoughtful team. They invited questions. They held a vendor call. They shared all of the strategy and brand artifacts that they had been working on for years with all of us. And they invited vendors to come and meet with their entire team. And that was a significant turning point for us, because we recall that that initial in-person meeting during the sales process, we had a really engaged Q&A session. Also around this project, I'd be remiss not to say that contracting is a story that we will tell forever. And, as you all know with procurement, it took 5 months, and it resulted in the most detailed scope of work that Atten has ever seen.
So this was a mantra that we kind of picked up early on, and I have to credit the Atten team with kind of developing it. And as Sally mentioned, it was kind of a partnership from the beginning. The interview process through the procurement, through the RFP proposal evaluation process, we recognized right away that Atten was going to be a good partner, and that we were headed in the same direction.
Yeah, I'd like to say, with all the pitches that we heard, it was obvious that anyone could do the job of helping us build a site that was good UX design and site architecture. But what we found with Atten is that we really aligned on why we were doing it. We shared a mission, and that was to create and design for the people. I think we mentioned all of our stakeholder groups indirectly when we were in that first meeting with Atten. And, basically our sales call felt more like our first stakeholder identification working session. And that was really nice.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for the high praise. We love that. But we agree with you. I mean, we really live what we sell, which is unfettered access to the Atten team. We believe in user-driven design. And so for that reason, that pitch meeting did feel very much like our first working session. Some of our partners know what they want and need, and they just want us to dive into wireframing and design. And that's okay. But we at Atten, we're so immersed in user research and making data-driven decisions that we love the opportunity to validate our partners' assumptions. And so the City of Raleigh team was also as incredibly focused as we are on delivering for users. So we knew immediately that this was a good partnership. I mean, beyond the work being a good fit for Atten, the partnership was a great fit for Atten as well.
And this is another partnership slide. So as I mentioned, the plan was to co-develop the site with the partner. We are lucky in the city to have access to good technical resources. And so Pete has a team behind him, and I'm lucky enough to have a few developers, and Atten has really talented developers, etc. And the last image, the little the loop video, is in this case, sometimes we're the dog, and sometimes we're the grandmother, and sometimes Atten's the dog, and sometimes Atten's the grandmother. But either way, we're sort of pulling each other along, and we're headed in the right direction. And sometimes it's at a faster pace than one of us would like, but we're headed in we're making progress.
I can talk to this one first. So as I mentioned, Atten is rooted in the belief that the best projects are built with input from end users. We believe that it's critical for any organization, but especially for public sector organizations like yourselves, to demonstrate that end users provided their input and that we used that data to make decisions. So Atten has a really thoughtful discovery process and a robust suite of services for our research and our research projects. So for this project, we workshopped with the core team who they believed their user groups were. And we supported that with a data analytics review to understand what content was on the site and who it spoke to. And then we segmented and prioritized these groups. So we landed on residents, investors, students, and visitors. But we have to acknowledge that city staff was not overlooked. So the system needed to be easy to use on the back end by over 100 content editors. So every project needs a plan. That's my bread and butter. So we took a holistic project roadmap and we identified milestones in the strategy, design, and development phases to engage these user groups so that we could plan for these events well ahead of time. So yes, we identified user needs, personas. We did thoughtful, thorough research that had a bunch of tactics that Pete will tell you about, and then we planned to engage them.
So engaging stakeholders. I mean, this is really what it's all about. We spent much of our time throughout the project listening to our stakeholders so we could build what the people wanted. You know, our stakeholder groups pretty much consisted of anyone and everyone who may be coming to our website for information. Yet it's important to define them because that helps you figure out how to reach them so that you gain insight through their feedback in order to make sure that you're providing content in a way that they want to consume it on your website. And we did extensive work here. At the very beginning, internally, we did a kickoff tour. We went before all of our 22 department heads and directors, our assistant city managers, we have 3 of them, and we just made sure they understood that from the top that the people that work for them in their departments that work on the website's content and such, that we were going to need them to dedicate a lot of energy into, you know, the content audit and to, you know, dedicate weekly time with us. We met with content editors and communications folks on a weekly basis, went through a content audit, talked about rewriting of content, organizational structure of content in the new environment. We did focus groups and beta testing and card sorting with those same communications folks. We also did a little bit of external audience work here with our community neighborhood groups. Another way, you know, concurrently when we started the project, we put a survey on our website about the current live site to gauge what people thought about it and to just listen. And we promoted that on the website, but we also promoted it through local news outlets and our social media accounts. We also did stakeholder meetings and beta site demos with groups like our employee advisory group and our digital connectors, and groups like that, like the employee advisory group, are really important because you're hitting a cross section of all of our departments. And so you're really gauging what's important to our internal city staff that way. And then digital connectors, that's a really special group for me. I love that program. It's about us taking underprivileged kids in high school and teaching them technology and how they can use that in their lives and why it's important. But then we come full circle and they teach that same technology to our elderly citizens. And it was really nice when we were in that stakeholder group meeting and we were demoing the site. And we were done in like 15 minutes because the kids were telling us why we designed the site the way we did and why we organized the content and why our structure was such that it was. And so that was just really refreshing. We've at least designed the website for the future. You know, Atten stepped up and came back after those initial meetings with us and did some extensive content editor training that we were really appreciative of. And then as we were finishing the project and about to launch, we held a town hall in the city council chambers where we invited basically anyone that worked for the city. And Atten was there with us to kind of debut what we were doing. And we also got feedback from them on what they didn't like about the old site and what they were looking for in the new site. And it was really refreshing to see that what they wanted us to improve upon is exactly what we did, because at that point it was too late. But I think the key there is that we listened to them all along. And so as we were building the site, we incorporated their feedback. So really there shouldn't have been a surprise in the town hall, because we were listening to them along the way. Mm-hmm. Informal communication is something that we did all throughout the project. We kept everyone in the loop. It's ironic to say that because our internal newsletter is called The Loop. We send it out twice a week to everyone in the city. And we had information there about where we were in the project, why it was important, what their role would need to be. And right up to launch, where we had a launch plan, and we put that out there in the same way for the internal users, using our internal channels, our intranet, our internal newsletter. And then we put it out there for the public by way of news releases that we sent out to the local media. And then we had launch notices on our website. So we did a lot of work, but I really think it was important because we listened to everyone, we got their feedback, and we ultimately, with Atten's help, designed a website for them.
Thank you, Pete. The only thing that I'll add here is I'm going to go a little deeper on the content editor training, just to demonstrate to you all how thoughtful the city of Raleigh wanted to be with the internal stakeholders. So Atten provided, like Pete said, we went back on site. So before we went back on site, Atten provided comprehensive documentation with how-tos. Ahead of time, we had asked the content editors for common tasks so that we could tailor the trainings around the things that they needed to do every day or month or week or quarter. We provided screencasts so that people could refer back to those in the future. And we also, at the on-site training, we conducted multiple sessions of the training. It wasn't just a one-size-fits-all training. We actually tailored the training for power users, casual users, developers, and we made everybody bring their laptops, and we did a little, song and dance and walk through the training documentation. But then we all rolled up our sleeves and we actually did some live editing right there so that we could make the most of our time together. Another big part of this was that Raleigh designated train the trainer opportunities, so that even when Atten took a step back from training, there were experts there on staff who could provide a resource, an ongoing resource to train new employees, to refer them to those screencasts, etc. And our launch plan was just as thoughtful.
It's interesting. I'm looking at these pictures. This represents a time when we used to meet in person a long time ago. One of the things that I thought was interesting is through all of those engagement opportunities and communication opportunities, I feel like we were recruiting advocates for the site. And so we were building a coalition of folks who believed that they were part of the building and development of the website. And therefore, I think that helped us through that launch transition.
So launch. We actually took the hard road here. We decided to go 4 weeks with parallel sites, keeping the old site up as well as the new one. It would have been real easy to spin up a new one and sunset the old one. But we were we listened to everyone, and we realized that, we were politically charged. We were in an election year that had a runoff, and there were some other things going on. And we knew that we needed to make sure that everyone in the community that wanted to get information from the city of Raleigh could do it. And if they still felt comfortable doing that with the old site, we needed to give them the 4 weeks to transition. So we decided to take that hard road. But what we actually found is that the new site was easily adopted, and about a week and a half in, all of our traffic was on the new site. I think that next council meeting that we had on that Tuesday, I think we only had like 10 to 15 people watching it live stream on the old site. So that was kind of an eye-opener. But we did what we thought was necessary to make sure everyone had the opportunity to engage with the content that we had. So we did keep the second site up, or the old site up. In the way of logistics, communications, and coordination, I mean, we planned hard with Atten for this. We made sure that we had dedicated folks that could answer questions once we launched. We had dedicated email addresses. We had a plan laid out. We opened a command center, which is the picture you see there. That's us all sitting around the table the night of launch. And it went eerily well. I mean, we prepared for the worst. We had everything in place, but it went really smoothly. This is just a moment to say that sitting in that room that night, it was really powerful because it made us realize all the work we had done throughout this process and the blood, sweat, and tears. And here was the final moment. And as we had people around the country saying, we've got the site live here, we've got it live in Boston, we've got it live in Colorado, and of course Raleigh was the last to get it. But when it went live, you had goosebumps because you had worked together as a team for all this time, and you had listened to all of your stakeholder groups, and you had produced what it was they were looking for. And so it was really a great feeling.
Yeah, I would echo that I think Pete and I on the city side have gone through a couple of opportunities to launch publicly facing digital updates to platforms, and almost all of them, you get some portion of the population that provides some very vocal and negative feedback. It's you've ruined everything, I hate you. We didn't get any of that. We got some social media feedback, and it was all positive. And it was, we were pleasantly surprised.
Absolutely.
As were we. We were really excited, of course, that we had fantastic feedback right out of the gate. But we did design, on my side anyway, the Atten team to be there to make quick iterations if people were really not loving what they saw. But as you can see, a week and a half in, most users had voluntarily adopted. And so we were able to celebrate because the feedback was wonderful, launch went smoothly, and yeah, now we could, enjoy the fruits of our hard labor.
So I guess what we could say here is it was time to celebrate. And this is our core team of communications and IT folks within the city of Raleigh that worked so hard on this project. And this was our celebration party. But that gentleman in the middle there is the city manager, and he took time out of his busy day to come celebrate with us and congratulate us. And that just kind of tells you we did a pretty good bang up job, because otherwise the city manager in a city of our size is not going to take the time to come down and talk to you about it. So that was a really feel good moment for us.
And I think the interesting thing is he's been the city manager for Raleigh for about 7 years. Prior to that, he was with the city of Charlotte. And he had gone through a couple of these transitions. And so he was also shocked at how smoothly it had gone. He was sort of prepared, right? From city council or whatever other kind of political body to get some kind of negative feedback. And he was blown away. I think it really speaks volumes to the team and the partnership and the work that we did.
So these are just some of our project outcomes. It was to provide a platform of services that help the community run smoothly, create a sustainable and flexible platform that meets the editorial needs of our staff. We have about 100 people that are in the system, but 50 of them really that are web editors on content. And then we bridge the gap between the community and government, ensuring that every department has a presence on the website, and they have their visibility that they need to spread the message that they feel needs to be spread. And we're continuously providing updates for various projects happening throughout the city. And really importantly, we're using the new brand materials as a guide. The city, concurrently with the website project, was going through a branding effort First time we've ever branded ourselves and had a nice new logo and a color palette to live by. And actually that project was a little ahead of the website project. And so it helped guide us with the design of the site, which was nice. But the website is our #1 communications tool. And with that, it is the best way to showcase what our brand is. I think another thing, a point I could make here is there were some like indirect organizational changes that came out of this project. IT and communications, I mean, while we worked together, we didn't work quite as closely as we do now. And we have a core team that still works together on the website project. And that's something that came out of this project that's really nice to have that partnership, that collaboration between our two departments. And I think it's good for the city.
Absolutely. And our partnership continues with the city of Raleigh as well. So we all know that the website is not a set it and forget it product. It's a living, breathing site. You know, cities are dynamic organizations and entities. And so our partnership continues. So we continue to work with IT and comms to listen to staffers and end users to provide support and innovation for Raleigh. So this is exactly where Atten loves our partnerships to land. So some partners have in-house teams, and we'll set those folks up for success, but we're always here to help. With the city of Raleigh, we have continued that one team, one dream. We've meshed our developers together, and we continue to sprint and release new features all the time.
So as Sally mentioned, we are kind of adopting that product lifecycle mentality, which is a little different for us in city government and in IT specifically. We are used to that waterfall project management where you get a big set of requirements, you implement them, and then you support that product to just make sure it's kind of stable. The idea around this project was to try and transition from a project to a product, to treat the website like a product and have these kind of 2-week cycles, sprint cycles, where we take a set of new features and functions and try and implement those in the site and push them to the live site, prioritize them, etc. You know, we've been doing this now for about 8 months, and it's new for us. We're co-developing the site with communications, my team, Atten, and you know, we're learning a whole bunch about how to make that work.
Love it. And so from a project management standpoint, we, like Jim said, we are sprinting and we are learning. And so Pete is still very much engaged with his content editors, and they have, I believe it's the web advisory group. And so they have sustained meetings where they'll QA for us, continue to give us feedback on areas for improvement. They'll go over the feedback from the new enhanced widgets. And so that drives our product backlog, and that backlog gets prioritized every month. And we plan and divvy up the work between Atten and the city of Raleigh, and it's working really well right now.
So talking about key takeaways, I think one of the biggest learning or lessons that we learned during this process is that it's never ever too early to start your content audit. You know, the city of Raleigh has 22 departments, and when we decided we needed a website so many years ago, it was just because everybody had a website, and that's what you thought you had to do. But then we had no idea how we were going to resource it from a personnel perspective. So it kind of fell on people throughout the city that maybe had bandwidth. So, you know, we have very few people that actually have web content manager in their title. You're looking at program managers and project managers, community managers, park facility managers that are, you know, working with content on the website. And so there's varying degrees of technical expertise. And so you have to figure out identify who those people are, and then what their skill level is, and how much time you need to work with them to get your content audited and then rewritten so that it is ready to move over to the new platform. So if there's one thing I could stress to everyone, it's if you're going to do this, start early. Yeah. And I think another thing, it's not here on the list, you always think of those things right before that you want to mention, but I would tell you maybe a few months after launch, take a pause for a moment and check under the hood, stop new development, and make sure your engine's running smoothly. Make sure your foundation's in top-notch shape so that you can then move forward with doing some dynamic things and really enhancing the site that you have with little to no headaches. And the other thing I would say is, at launch, take the time to enjoy the success of your hard work.
That's great advice. The other advice that I would give, logistically speaking, just a takeaway, content migration. So like Jim said, the city was coming from Alfresco, which was an outdated CMS. And so we knew that this was going to be a big undertaking going from Alfresco to Drupal. And we planned for, I believe it was 2 months to automate and test the migration. It ended up taking 4 months. So hindsight being 2020, again, give yourself enough runway, start the migration, the content audit work, all of that as early as possible. As soon as you know what your new infrastructure is going to be, start auditing and revising your existing content. Start planning the content migration backend work early. Refine your content audit and revisions as soon as you know what the design is going to look like and the tone of your new front end. But it all ended up working out, and the timeline was well within what Jim had predicted from day one. And so even though we were delayed on the content migration, we still fit it in on time and launched successfully.
And I think all of us, the takeaway on the internal side was, we have a site that we're proud of, which is, for me, that's almost one of the most important things. That was something, one of the criteria for success for me was, when I tell people that I am associated with the RaleighNC.gov website, I want to be proud to say that. And I am totally proud of the product, the team, the partnership, all of those things. So I think that's it. Is there anything else you want to add, Peter, Sally, before we take questions?
No.
Okay.
Design for the people.
That sounds like our next logo that we designed together.
I think so.
Okay, well, thank you so much. By the way, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Joe Crespo. I'm the Director of Accounts at Atten, and I agreed to help facilitate some of the questions. There's some good questions coming on in. So I guess the first question was asked by Lois in general. Sally, it looks like you've already answered it, but I thought I'd just surface this for everybody, which is, how much of the content editor training was technical / how to use the system, and how much was best practices on writing for the web?
Mm-hmm. So my answer to Lois was that it was primarily around the technical how to use the site. That was the first and foremost goal of the training, was to make sure that people felt comfortable in the admin area of the website and could find the content that they needed to edit, or to find how to publish new content. But secondarily, there was a major emphasis placed on how to write or best practices for the web. But it had a layer of accessibility. So we know public sector websites need to be accessible, 508 compliant. And so we put that as a major priority. So everything from how to design and build for logical order and screen readers to best practices for button copy, all of that was included in terms of how to write and publish good content. But it had that accessibility angle to it.
And I might add,
yeah.
I was just going to add to that. We realized that this didn't stop with launch, that we needed to continually work with content editors to identify stakeholders even after the site launch, because, you know, you have new projects, new programs coming at you. We just created a new Office of Inclusion and Equity. And so with that, you may have different stakeholder groups that you have to identify and then strategize for how you can best reach them with your content on the website. So, you know, I've created what I call web labs. And so we pull all the content editors together on a monthly basis where we take them through strategy. You know, where is it best to use a service page versus a support page content type? Or how do you use all of the paragraph content types to really promote the content that you have? So it's an ongoing training that we're doing, and we do writing workshops periodically. We're bringing in external groups. SAS Institute is right here in the area. So they're actually doing our October web lab to give me a break. And they're going to train us on accessibility and ADA compliance. So yeah, it doesn't stop with launch.
Fantastic. Lois, if you have a follow-up, please put in the chat. We're happy to take it. I'm going to take a question from Leslie. Can you tell me more about the beta launch and how your process went logistically? We are considering a similar approach for Boulder in terms of launching a beta site first.
So I guess what we could say there is we set up well, labs where we brought in computers from our IT department and set them up and had the website for people to work through exercises or to navigate through content, and for us to record what steps they took and how they engaged with the website.
Jim, Sally, you want to add anything to that?
So logistically, I will also just let you, we put up a banner on the live site. So when we launched the new site, we had a slightly different URL, and we put a banner up on the existing site, encouraging people and inviting them to experience the new website and letting them know that we'd sunset it after 4 weeks. And so that's logistically how we allowed people to move between new and old for a few weeks. I don't know if that answers your question, but that is how we handled it as far as announcing and inviting people to the new URL.
And so for me, there was an alpha, beta, and soft launch. So the alpha was more about just sharing kind of the design, the theming, the design, and the look and feel. And we did that just through just general communications out to users, etc. The beta was exactly what Pete was mentioning. Was we had a almost done site that we would create a public URL that we would only create for a little while we were having these web labs, invite a bunch of people in to test the site, give us some feedback. We gather that feedback, take down that URL so that people couldn't share it, and etc. And then we did the soft launch itself, which kind of Sally described, which was running those parallel sites. And the idea, it's so interesting, I don't think we covered it during the presentation. The plan was to launch the site with the legacy site being the primary site for 4 weeks, I believe. And then we were going to cut over to have the new site be the primary site, and still, right, as a kind of a safety net, we were going to still have the legacy site available in a little banner up top to say, can't find what you're looking for, click here. And you could, for those folks who would be would have some aversion to the new look and feel, couldn't find what they were looking for, we ended up not having that for 4 weeks. We ended up only having that, I think, for a week and a half. But so there was a bunch of stages of that process.
Awesome. I have a question from Max, and this is going to sound pretty familiar to people who have to deal with large stakeholder groups. Any tips for dealing with problematic stakeholders? For example, higher ups who are too busy and have too busy for your early engagement activities and little appreciation for the concept of project management, but have strong opinions after things get deployed. You know what? I will just throw this to the floor, and whoever wants to jump on this first.
So I'm happy to start. So for us, the strategy that I think worked on this project was we didn't decide to take an approach bottom up, top down. We ended up taking all of the approaches and just tried to so Pete and his team did a phenomenal job of just oversaturating with communication. So We did top down, bottom up. Pete can talk about some of the specifics on how we engaged with executives, how we engaged with content editors, how we engage with frontline staff, how we engage with citizens, but we tried to engage with all of them and then oversaturate with communication.
I think, Jim, there was some pushback at the beginning, if I remember, some challenging times around the switch from an organizational departmental website and making the sea change to a services-based model. Do you want to go into a little detail around all of the effort there to bring people around and let them know about the build for the people, not for the departments?
I'll let Pete do that one. That's Pete.
So really, it was a lot of work, but it wasn't about this one moment where we sat them all down and we had this epiphany with them. We strategically had many meetings with them where we showed, visuals of what things could look like and had that service focused already in place. We showed statistics and examples with them from other communities so that they would understand where we were going. We also sold them on the idea that while we're going to be a service-focused website, you will still be able to engage with that content through department tabs. And what we did was we used the power of Drupal with the taxonomy to create that loop. So whether someone's coming in looking for a specific service, or whether they're coming in looking for a particular place or building in town, or whether they're coming in from the department tab, they'll find the content they need because we've done a good job of creating that loop with the taxonomy and having all of the proper content types in place. One of the ways that we got in front of the management team was our city has a executive management team meeting every Wednesday. They have a breakfast actually every Wednesday after City Council Tuesday. So we made sure that we were on the agenda for many of those throughout the process of this project so that we could get in there and show them what we were doing. And so we got buy-in from them that way as well. And then we also cornered the communications director and the IT director and pleaded with them to talk about the new website project anytime they had to talk with anyone else within, the other departments, regardless of, level of, job title. And so I think Jim's right. It was all about consistent messaging throughout the project and not giving anybody something, that they hadn't heard about, because that's where you run into people fear what they don't know. And if they know about it and you keep consistently putting that message out there in whatever avenue you can, then I think it helps to build momentum and for the project. And then you've sold them, you've won them over. And at the end, there are no surprises and they're as happy about the new website as the public is.
And, Pete
Jim
and
Pete, I just want to say, Jim and Pete, I think both of you have demonstrated why you're giving this talk at GovCon, because this is extremely well organized. But I think that and Jim, I want to give you an opportunity to answer, but I just want to make sure, like, if we are in a project where things are going sideways with a stakeholder, like, what are some tactics that some folks can employ to bring them back into the fold?
So in my experience, the thing is to stop, bring people together and just talk, just listen, whether they're real, fancied, made up concerns, just listen to them, make sure that they feel heard. One of the things I was going to mention is Pete and I have both been with the city for, 7+ years. And so coming into the project, we've worked with enough of these people to know we could have written their names down on a list and knew that they needed special consideration through our communication plan. And those things where we needed one-on-one meetings, maybe not with Pete and I and Sally, but instead I needed to mobilize the CIO or the communications director and we knew some of the concerns they were going to have. And we kind of seeded the communications with those kind of types of meetings to try and just make sure we got it on the books and above board as soon as we can. Let's just kind of identify it, quantify it, and then let's see if it's how big of a roadblock it's going to be.
Right.
Don't be afraid to have a conversation.
For the Atten project management part of it, I would only add that, like Jim said, they could have written those names down on a piece of paper. So from day one, Jim and Pete knew and told me which departments were going to need a longer lead time on content audit or content entry. And we built that into our schedule. So we tried to get ahead of as much as we could and give people deadlines that were attainable. And we zigged and zagged and we were nimble when people missed those deadlines. That's inevitable. And so, I mean, if everybody could follow a single schedule, then I probably wouldn't have a job. But, you know, we zigged, we zagged, we're nimble, but getting ahead of it and understanding who your stakeholders are from the kickoff, understanding your core team, your secondary stakeholders, who are your end user stakeholders, who are your approvers, and then where are the risks and doing a risk mitigation. You know, if you know that there's a bunch of capital projects happening, then maybe the folks in those capital projects are going to have less time and attention for this project. So let's go ahead and just block time with them now and get ahead of it as far as we can to make sure that those meetings happen, to make sure that those reviews happen, and that we get that feedback as, you know, early as possible so that we can integrate any potential changes before it's too late. Although in a product mindset, it's never too late.
The next question is about diversity, and is, you know, how do you ensure that different groups of stakeholders reflected the diversity of the city? Did you include people with disabilities or people who speak languages other than English?
We actually did have an accessibility workshop and brought people in. SAS was a big part of that. As you can probably tell, we have a good relationship with them and work with them throughout the year. And we, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we made sure to get in front of groups of people that represented all of the departments. So our employee advisory group is a good example of a group that has people from every department represented, so that it wasn't just us going to our biggest department, parks, or our department with the most complex content, which was planning and development. We made sure everybody was included and involved. And then we invited all of our community engagement, or all of our community committees that represent the various neighborhoods in Raleigh to come to these sessions. And so all were welcome to come and give their feedback, to see what we were doing, to give input. So you're not going to find that magic group that's going to cover everyone or every group. It's about getting in front of as many groups as possible. I mean, we even went, our television station has a community producers program where it teaches people how to be a producer in a television station. We even went to that group because we felt like it was a cross section of the population of Raleigh. And we made sure we didn't stick to just downtown. We went to some groups in North Raleigh, which is almost like a whole nother city, you know, that butts up against us. So it's not about finding the one place that you're going to hear everyone's feedback. It's about just consistently, you know, looking at that slide about all the stakeholder meetings and card sortings that we did. I felt really proud about all the work that we did. And I also felt just a wee bit tired because it made me realize we were nonstop getting in front of as many groups of people as possible. Whether we went to all of the, we have the senior rec centers. We went out to those centers and make sure we were talking to some of our elderly citizens. And like I said, we went to the Digital Connectors program, which is high schoolers, underprivileged high schoolers, where we provided them with the technology for the program. So it's about hitting as many people as possible in different groups.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we are out of time. There may be one more. Oh, no, that's just a thank you. Thank you so much, Max. And if anybody has any follow-up questions, I guess you can reach out to me. I'll put my emails in the chat. Happy to respond to any questions that you may have. And thank you so much for making time. And thank you so much, Jim, Pete, Sally. This is a fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for coming.
Enjoy the rest of your Friday.
Yeah.